November 9th, 1944. Hill, 293, near Schmidt, Germany. The temperature had dropped to 28 degrees Fahrenheit as dawn broke over the Hurtgen forest. Through the morning mist, Oberst Lieutenant Klaus Zimmermann of the 942nd Grenadier Regiment watched an American position through his binoculars, counting what appeared to be fewer than 20 soldiers holding a critical junction. His lips curved into a slight smile. Intelligence reports suggested these were replacement troops, fresh from training, equipped with what German veterans dismissively called Bauerngewehre, farmer rifles, the semi-automatic M1 Garand that German soldiers mocked as too heavy, too loud, and proof of American industrial wastefulness. Why give every soldier an 8-shot semi-automatic when a bolt-action rifle in trained hands was superior? Zimmermann's battalion, 240 veterans of the Eastern Front, would sweep through these Americans like wheat before a scythe. They had faced Soviet conscripts armed with superior weapons and prevailed through training and discipline. These soft Americans, with their factory rifles, would break within minutes. What Zimmermann couldn't see through his binoculars was Private First Class Alvin York, Jr., 23 years old, from Pall Mall, Tennessee. No relation to the famous World War I hero, despite sharing the name. York sat in his foxhole, methodically checking his M1 Garand for the third time that morning. The rifle that German intelligence dismissed as a farmer's tool was about to rewrite the mathematics of infantry combat. By noon that day, York would kill 37 German soldiers, not over weeks of combat, not across multiple engagements, but in approximately 4 hours of continuous fighting that would leave his rifle barrel so hot it blistered his hand through his glove. The Germans who survived would report facing what seemed like an entire platoon of marksmen, unable to comprehend that a single American with a cheap farmer rifle had destroyed their battalion's combat effectiveness. The contempt began long before Schmidt. When German intelligence first examined captured M1 Garands in North Africa during early 1943, their assessment was almost pitying. The weapon analysis report filed with Heer headquarters in Berlin noted, "The American M1 rifle demonstrates typical American excess, weighing 9.5 pounds empty versus our Karabiner 98K at 8.6 pounds. It sacrifices the soldier's mobility for questionable advantage. The semi-automatic mechanism requires complex manufacturing, suggesting Americans compensate for poor marksmanship training with rate of fire. The 8-round en-bloc clip system is crude compared to our 5-round stripper clips. The distinctive ping when the clip ejects reveals to any competent soldier that the American weapon is empty, creating obvious tactical vulnerability. Assessment: adequate for poorly trained troops requiring suppressive fire over precision, unsuitable for veteran formations. This analysis would prove catastrophically wrong, but it reflected deeper German assumptions about American military culture. They believed that a nation of soft civilians could never produce soldiers matching German military tradition. That American reliance on industrial production revealed weakness rather than strength. That giving every infantryman a semi-automatic rifle was wasteful when bolt-action rifles in properly trained hands were more accurate. The irony was profound. Germany had actually pioneered semi-automatic rifle development. The Gewehr 41 and later Gewehr 43 represented excellent engineering, but production limitations meant only specialized troops received them. The average German infantryman carried the Karabiner 98K, an evolution of a design from 1898. Meanwhile, every American rifleman received an M1 Garand, a weapon that would be called by General George Patton the greatest battle implement ever devised. Alvin York, Jr. had received exactly 14 weeks of infantry training at Camp Wheeler, Georgia, before shipping to Europe. The son of a tobacco farmer who had never owned a gun before the Army, York took to the M1 Garand immediately. Something about its weight, its balance, the smooth action of the gas-operated rotating bolt resonated with him. His drill instructor, Sergeant Mike Patterson, a veteran of Guadalcanal, recognized York's natural ability during qualification. The kid from Tennessee consistently scored expert, grouping shots at 300 yards that impressed even hardened veterans. "Son," Patterson told him, after one particularly impressive range session, "that Garand in your hands is like Joe Louis with his fists. You got a gift. Don't waste it." But it wasn't just natural talent. The American training program, which German intelligence dismissed as inferior, had evolved into the most comprehensive marksmanship instruction in military history. Every recruit fired thousands of rounds, not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. The expenditure of ammunition that seemed wasteful to German planners was actually investment in lethality. York's training included something German soldiers rarely experienced: realistic combat scenarios with moving targets, stress firing, quick target acquisition drills. By the time he shipped to Europe in September 1944, York had fired over 4,000 rounds through his M1. He knew its quirks, its rhythm, its capabilities intimately. The rifle wasn't just a tool, it was an extension of his body. The M1 Garand represented American industrial philosophy perfected. Designed by Canadian-American John Garand at Springfield Armory, the rifle solved problems that had stymied European designers for decades. The gas-operated rotating bolt system was brilliantly simple. Expanding gas from each shot cycled the action, ejected the spent cartridge, loaded a new round, and cocked the hammer for the next shot. All the shooter had to do was aim and pull the trigger 8 times. The production statistics told their own story. Springfield Armory and Winchester manufactured approximately 4 million M1 Garands during the war. Peak production reached 10,000 rifles daily. Each rifle contained 65 precision-machined parts that had to function flawlessly under combat conditions. Temperature extremes from -40 to +120 degrees Fahrenheit, mud, sand, water, snow, nothing stopped a properly maintained Garand. The quality control exceeded anything German industry achieved. Every rifle was tested by actually firing it. Random samples were subjected to endurance testing, firing thousands of rounds without cleaning. Tolerances were measured in thousandths of an inch. The result was a weapon that worked when soldiers needed it most. German soldiers who captured M1s often tried using them, only to discover the rifle required different techniques than their bolt actions. The recoil, the rate of fire, the en-bloc clip system, all demanded adaptation. Most Germans who tried concluded their original weapons were superior, confirming their preconceptions. They never realized they were using the Garand wrong, applying bolt-action rifle techniques to a semi-automatic platform. November 9th began with German artillery. At 0530, Zimmermann's supporting battery delivered a 10-minute barrage on American positions. The shelling was precise and devastating, an orchestration of high explosive and smoke designed to suppress defenders before the infantry assault. York huddled in his foxhole, earth raining down with each impact, the concussive force making his chest feel crushed. This was his first major engagement. Training hadn't prepared him for the sheer violence of modern artillery. Men were screaming, the smell of cordite mixed with torn earth and something else, something metallic and terrible. When the barrage lifted at 0540, York's platoon of 42 men had been reduced to 19 effectives. The lieutenant was dead, killed by a direct hit. The platoon sergeant was wounded, calling for a medic with increasing desperation. Command had devolved to Corporal James Miller, a 20-year-old from Ohio with exactly 3 months of combat experience. Miller made the only decision he could. We hold here. Anybody runs, we all die. York, you take the right side. Johnson, left. Everybody else, fill the gaps. They're coming. Through the smoke and morning mist, York saw them. Gray-clad figures moving in tactical bounds using cover, advancing with the confidence of veterans who had done this hundreds of times before. Professional soldiers executing a textbook assault against what they assumed were demoralized American replacements. York's first shot killed a German squad leader at approximately 250 yards. The man simply dropped, no drama. Just there one moment and gone the next. His second shot, 2 seconds later, dropped the soldier moving to take command. Third shot, fourth shot, fifth shot. Each one precise, each one finding a target. The distinctive crack of the M1 Garand was different from the sharper report of German Mausers. It had a deeper, more authoritative sound, and it didn't stop. While German soldiers worked their bolt actions, cycling rounds manually, York's semi-automatic kept firing, 8 rounds in less than 10 seconds, all accurately placed. The German assault faltered. Zimmermann, watching from his command post, couldn't understand what was happening. His lead squads were taking casualties at an impossible rate. Where he expected scattered, aimed shots from bolt-action rifles, he was seeing sustained, accurate fire that seemed to come from multiple positions. York reloaded, the empty and-block clip ejecting with its famous ping. He had practiced this thousands of times. New clip in, thumb pressing down against the follower, rifle automatically chambering the first round as the bolt slammed forward, 3 seconds from empty to firing again. He spotted a German machine gun team setting up, 3 men working to establish a position that would enfilade the American line. York's next 8 rounds killed all 3 before they could fire a shot. The MG-42 they'd been positioning sat silent, its crew scattered around it. To York's left, Johnson was down, hit in the shoulder. To his right, Private Anderson was firing his M1 in short, controlled bursts. But the volume of fire was dropping. The Germans were regrouping for another push, and the American position was being whittled down. Zimmermann committed his reserve, another full company, 120 men. This would break the Americans. It had to. But as his fresh troops advanced, they encountered the same withering, sustained fire. The Americans weren't running. They weren't breaking. They were killing Germans with mechanical efficiency. York was in a rhythm now. Spot target, aim, fire, shift to next target. The M1's recoil was manageable, the gas operation soaking up much of the force. He could maintain aimed fire faster than any bolt-action operator could cycle their weapon. 8 rounds, reload, 8 more rounds. The arithmetic of survival was simple. Kill them before they killed you. A German squad tried flanking through a draw to York's right. He saw them moving, shadows in the smoke and morning light. Shifted his position slightly, waited until they were in the open. 8 shots in rapid succession. 5 Germans fell. The survivors dove for cover, pinned. Zimmermann's assault was disintegrating. What should have been a quick overwhelming of demoralized Americans had turned into a nightmare. His casualties were mounting, the wounded were crying out. And still that terrible sustained American fire kept coming. At 08:15, approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes after the assault began, Zimmermann ordered withdrawal. His battalion had suffered over 100 casualties. The American position, which should have fallen in minutes, had held. Worse, it had inflicted disproportionate losses on veteran troops. The morning action cost York's depleted platoon 6 more men killed, 8 wounded. Of the 19 who had started the fight, 5 remained combat effective. York was untouched except for blistered hands from his overheated rifle barrel. The bodies of German soldiers dotted the approaches to the American position. Counting would come later. But the battle wasn't over. Zimmermann's regiment was under orders to take Hill 293, regardless of cost. At 1100 hours, after regrouping and bringing up additional forces, the Germans attacked again. This assault was different. Zimmermann had learned from the morning's disaster. He committed 2 full companies simultaneously, attacking from multiple directions using smoke for concealment. 320 men against the handful of Americans still fighting. York watched them come. He was down to his last 100 rounds of ammunition. His rifle was filthy, caked with carbon and dirt. But it still worked. The M1 Garand, for all the German contempt, was proving almost impossible to jam. The gas system and the generous tolerances meant it kept cycling even when conditions were terrible. The Germans came in rushes, small groups darting from cover to cover. York tracked them, leading his targets, squeezing the trigger with the smooth pressure his instructors had drilled into him. The semi-automatic advantage was overwhelming. He could engage multiple targets in seconds. A bolt-action rifleman would still be cycling his action for the second shot when York had already fired 4. To his left, Anderson fell, killed instantly by a burst of MG-42 fire. Miller was hit in the leg but kept fighting, propped against his foxhole, firing his Thompson submachine gun in controlled bursts. They were being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. York made a decision that would define his war. Instead of staying defensive, he went hunting. Grabbing extra ammunition bandoliers from fallen comrades, he low-crawled to a better position, a slight rise that gave him clear fields of fire across the German approach routes. From this position, York began systematically destroying the German assault. Squad leaders fell first, then machine gun crews, then anyone who tried to take command. The Germans started going to ground, their assault losing momentum as leaders died and organization dissolved. A German officer, recognizing the threat, organized a squad to rush York's position. York saw them coming, 10 men in field gray, moving with purpose. He let them close to 50 yards, then opened fire. 8 rounds, 6 Germans fell. Reload, 2 more rounds, and the survivors broke, running back to their lines. The psychological impact was devastating. German soldiers had been taught they were superior infantry, that their training and discipline made them unbeatable by American conscripts. Yet here was an American, alone on a hillside, breaking their assault through sheer lethality. At 1300 hours, approximately 1 p.m., the German attack collapsed. Zimmermann's regiment had suffered catastrophic casualties. 2 companies were combat ineffective. The rest were demoralized, having lost faith in their officers' assurances about American weakness. When American reinforcements finally arrived at 1500 hours, 3 p.m., they found York still in his position, surrounded by empty en bloc clips. His M1 Garand, which he'd been firing for over 6 hours with only brief pauses, was still functional. The barrel was burned, the wood handguard scorched, but the gas system kept cycling. The body count was methodical and grim. German dead in sectors where York had been firing totaled 37 confirmed kills. This didn't include probables or wounded who died later. 37 enemy soldiers killed by 1 American rifleman in approximately 4 hours of continuous combat. The after-action report filed by 1st Battalion, 22nd Infantry noted Private First Class Alvin York, Jr. demonstrated exceptional marksmanship and courage under fire. His effective use of the M1 rifle prevented enemy breakthrough and inflicted severe casualties on attacking forces. Recommend for Silver Star and promotion to sergeant. But the report's dry language missed the broader significance. York had demonstrated what American doctrine had always claimed. A semi-automatic rifle in trained hands was devastatingly superior to bolt-action weapons. The rate of accurate fire possible with the M1 Garand changed infantry combat mathematics fundamentally. If you're finding this story as fascinating as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The stories of American innovation in World War II that I uncover go way beyond what's in the history books, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's get back to how the Germans responded to this devastating revelation. When German intelligence analyzed the action at Hill 293, they struggled to explain what had happened. Initial reports suggested York's platoon had been reinforced by a company of riflemen. Only prisoner interrogation and American radio intercepts revealed the truth. 1 man with a semi-automatic rifle had effectively destroyed a battalion's combat power. The revelation spread through German ranks faster than official reports. Veterans of the Eastern Front, men who had faced Soviet infantry with PPSH submachine guns and SVT-40 semi-automatic rifles, recognized what was happening. The Americans had equipped every infantryman with a weapon that gave them overwhelming advantage in firefights. A captured German lieutenant, interrogated at 1st Army Headquarters in December 1944, provided revealing testimony. We were taught the American soldier was soft, poorly trained, dependent on a material superiority. Then we face them in combat. Their riflemen fire faster than our submachine gunners. They hit what they aim at. They don't break under pressure. Every engagement taught us we were wrong about the Americans. The contempt turned to respect, then to fear. German soldiers began calling M1 Garand-equipped Americans the Achtschuss, the eight-shooters. Squads detailed to assault American positions requested extra ammunition and smoke grenades. Nobody wanted to advance across open ground against Americans with Garands. The rifle's technical specifications told only part of the story. Yes, it was heavier than the German Kar 98K, 9.5 pounds versus 8.6 pounds. But that extra weight came from a gas system, operating rod, and stronger receiver that enabled semi-automatic fire. The trade-off was absolutely worth it. The M1's effective range of 440 yards matched the Kar 98 AK. Accuracy was comparable, perhaps slightly less at extreme ranges, but infantry combat typically occurred at under 300 yards, where the difference was negligible. Where the Garand excelled was sustained rate of fire. 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute versus 15 to 20 for bolt-action rifles. The N-block clip system, mocked by German analysts, was actually brilliant engineering. 8 rounds fed from an internal clip that ejected automatically when empty. Reload time averaged 3 seconds for trained soldiers. The famous ping of the ejecting clip, supposed tactical vulnerability, was actually irrelevant in combat's noise and chaos. No German soldier ever successfully exploited hearing an empty clip eject. The ammunition, 30-06 Springfield, provided excellent ballistics. The 150 grain bullet retained lethality at all combat ranges. American factories produced billions of rounds to exacting quality standards. Unlike German ammunition in late war, which suffered from quality control failures, American rounds were consistent and reliable. Most critically, the M1 Garand was designed for mass production by workers with minimal training. The Springfield Armory and Winchester manufactured rifles using interchangeable parts. Any component could replace any other. Field maintenance was simple. Soldiers could strip and clean the rifle in minutes. German semi-automatic rifles, by contrast, required skilled craftsmen for production and maintenance. The Gewehr 41 and 43 were excellent weapons, but Germany produced only about 400,000 total versus America's 4 million Garands. The difference wasn't quality, it was quantity, married to quality. The training disparity compounded the equipment advantage. American riflemen received hundreds of hours of marksmanship instruction. They fired thousands of practice rounds. They trained in realistic combat scenarios. German soldiers in late 1944 received minimal training, often under 100 hours total, with severe ammunition shortages limiting live-fire practice. Technical Sergeant Raymond Gantner, an infantry tactics instructor at Fort Benning, explained the philosophy in a 1945 training manual. The M1 Garand allows average soldiers to achieve effects previously requiring exceptional marksmen. Semi-automatic fire means the soldier focuses on target acquisition and trigger control, not bolt manipulation. This dramatically improves hit probability under stress. The psychological advantage was equally important. German soldiers advancing under M1 Garand fire faced continuous, accurate shooting that seemed never to pause. The sound alone was demoralizing, that deep crack repeating rapidly, each report potentially marking another casualty. Bolt-action rifles had rhythm, shot, pause for cycling, shot. The Garand just kept firing. Alvin York Jr.'s 37 kills represented the extreme, but his effectiveness wasn't unique. Analysis of infantry combat throughout the European theater showed M1 equipped units consistently outperformed bolt-action equipped forces in firefights. The U.S. 1st Infantry Division study from 1945 noted that squads with M1 Garands achieved 2.3 times more hits per minute than comparable German units. The production miracle behind the M1 Garand deserves emphasis. In 1941, Springfield Armory was producing approximately 600 rifles monthly. By 1943, combined production from Springfield and Winchester reached 40,000 monthly. This 10,000% increase occurred while maintaining quality standards that exceeded military specifications. The workforce that built these rifles reflected American diversity. Women comprised 40% of workers at Winchester's New Haven plant by 1944. African Americans, Mexican Americans, and workers of all backgrounds manufactured precision weapons that German propaganda claimed only Aryan craftsmen could produce. Quality control data proved them devastatingly wrong. Each M1 Garand underwent proof testing by actually firing it with overcharged ammunition. Random samples received endurance testing, firing thousands of rounds without cleaning. Headspace, timing, and gas port dimensions were measured to thousandths of an inch. The rejection rate for out-of-spec parts approached zero by mid-war, testament to manufacturing excellence. The supply chain ensuring every rifleman received ammunition was equally impressive. Lake City Army Ammunition Plant in Missouri produced over 4 billion rounds of .30-06 during the war years. Quality control meant every round fired reliably. Logistics meant ammunition reached frontline units continuously. German soldiers in late 1944 were rationing rifle ammunition. Americans had unlimited supplies. York's actions at Hill 293 weren't rewarded with the Medal of Honor, though his company commander nominated him. The award was downgraded to Silver Star, perhaps because the action didn't fit traditional heroism narratives. York didn't charge enemy positions or rescue wounded comrades. He simply killed enemy soldiers with devastating efficiency, using superior equipment and training. But his achievement resonated through First Army. Other soldiers heard about the Tennessee farmer who destroyed a German battalion with a cheap farmer rifle. The M1 Garand's reputation grew from respect to reverence. Soldiers who had cursed the rifle's weight now appreciated that mass came with capability. German forces adapted their tactics in response to American firepower superiority. They increased emphasis on machine guns, attempting to match American rifle firepower with crew-served weapons. They developed infiltration tactics, trying to close range where the Garand's advantages diminished. They requested more assault rifles, the Sturmgewehr 44, recognizing that semi-automatic and automatic weapons were the future. But adaptation couldn't overcome mathematics. Every American infantry regiment fielded approximately 2,000 M1 Garands. Every German regiment fielded perhaps 200 semi-automatic weapons total, the rest bolt actions. In any firefight, Americans could generate 3 to 4 times the volume of aimed fire. Superiority that decisive couldn't be countered by tactics alone. The Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 provided the ultimate test. German forces achieved tactical surprise, attacking with over 200,000 troops, including elite SS divisions. These were the best soldiers Germany still fielded, veterans of multiple campaigns, properly equipped and supplied. They ran directly into American infantry with M1 Garands. The results were predictable. German after-action reports repeatedly noted that American small unit resistance exceeded expectations. Even when overwhelmed by numbers, American squads inflicted disproportionate casualties before being overrun or withdrawing. The M1 Garand's firepower allowed outnumbered defenders to delay or stop larger German forces. At St. Vith, Bastogne, Elsenborn Ridge, and dozens of smaller actions, American riflemen with Garands held positions that German doctrine said should have fallen quickly. The sustained, accurate fire forced Germans to take casualties they couldn't afford. By late December 1944, the offensive had collapsed partly because American firepower, particularly rifle firepower, exceeded German planning assumptions. Oberst Lieutenant Klaus Zimmermann survived the war, surrendering to American forces in April 1945. In post-war interrogation, he was asked about the action at Hill 293. His response was candid. "We underestimated the American soldier and his weapons. We believed our training made us superior. We learned that industrial capacity, properly applied to weapons development and production, creates overwhelming advantage. The M1 rifle in American hands was more effective than our best weapons in ours." This admission from a veteran German officer captured the broader reality. The cheap farmer rifle that German intelligence had dismissed was actually one of the war's decisive weapons. It didn't win battles through dramatic moments, but through cumulative advantage in thousands of small firefights where American riflemen simply killed more enemy soldiers than their German counterparts could. General George S. Patton's assessment that the M1 Garand was the greatest battle implement ever devised wasn't hyperbole. It was recognition that the rifle represented the perfect convergence of American strengths: industrial capacity to mass produce complex weapons, training infrastructure to teach millions of soldiers to use them effectively, logistical system to keep them supplied with ammunition, democratic mobilization to recruit and train a citizen army that mastered modern weapons. The German contempt for American military capability, exemplified by dismissing the M1 as a farmer rifle, stemmed from fundamental misunderstanding. They confused industrial sophistication with weakness. They assumed that giving every soldier a semi-automatic rifle meant Americans couldn't train soldiers to use bolt actions properly. They believed their military traditions guaranteed superiority over American citizen soldiers. Before we wrap up this incredible story, I want to ask you to do one thing. If you've enjoyed learning about how American innovation and industrial might change the course of history, please subscribe to this channel. I spend weeks researching these stories to bring you details you won't find anywhere else. Your subscription helps me continue this work. Now let's finish with what happened to York and the legacy of his famous rifle. Alvin York, Jr. survived the war, returning to Pall Mall, Tennessee in November 1945. He never spoke much about Hill 293, uncomfortable with attention for what he considered simply doing his job. The rifle that made him famous, M1 Garand serial number 3,247,612, was lost in a supply depot reorganization in early 1945. York worked as a tobacco farmer, married, raised 4 children, and lived quietly until his death in 1997 at age 76. His obituary mentioned his Silver Star, but not the 37 kills, a detail his family only discussed after his death. He had kept one memento, the scorched wooden handguard from his Garand, replaced during maintenance after the Hill 293 action. The M1 Garand continued service long after World War II ended. It equipped American soldiers in Korea, where its superiority over both Soviet and Chinese bolt actions again proved decisive. It remained in limited service through early Vietnam, finally replaced by the M14 and then M16 rifles in the 1960s. But its influence extends far beyond direct service. The M1 Garand established semi-automatic fire as standard for infantry rifles. Every modern military rifle, from the AK-47 to the M4 carbine, descends conceptually from the Garand's gas-operated semi-automatic design. The revolution John Garand began in the 1930s continues shaping infantry combat today. The production achievement behind the M1 deserves lasting recognition. 4 million rifles manufactured during wartime to exacting standards, with interchangeable parts, by workers including housewives and teenagers who had never seen a factory before 1941. This feat of industrial mobilization matched the Liberty ships, the Manhattan Project, and the arsenal of democracy's other triumphs. German forces, for all their tactical prowess and veteran soldiers, couldn't overcome the compound advantages American industry provided. The M1 Garand was just one example. Sherman tanks, proximity-fused artillery shells, advanced radios, abundant ammunition, all flowed from factories that German planners dismissed as incapable of war production. The contempt German intelligence showed for the cheap farmer rifle represented broader failure to understand American society. They saw decadence where there was prosperity. They saw weakness where there was restraint. They saw inability where there was simply different choices. When American industrial might fully mobilized for war, German assumptions collapsed under the weight of production. Today, M1 Garands are collector's items sought by enthusiasts and historians. The civilian marksmanship program sells refurbished military surplus Garands to qualified Americans. Shooting one reveals immediately why soldiers loved the rifle. The smooth action, the manageable recoil, the satisfying ping of an empty clip ejecting all combine into shooting experience unlike any other rifle. Veterans who carried Garands in combat speak of the weapon with reverence. It was heavy, they acknowledge. It was loud, but it worked, always, under any conditions. And it gave them fighting chance against enemies who often had better positions, more experience, or numerical superiority. The 8 rounds of semi-automatic fire meant American soldiers could fight effectively even when circumstances were terrible. The statistics from the European theater support this assessment. American infantry units equipped with M1 Garands consistently achieved higher kill ratios than Allied units with bolt-action rifles, even when facing the same German forces. British and Canadian units transitioning to semi-automatic rifles late in the war reported immediate improvement in combat effectiveness. The Soviet Union, despite producing excellent semi-automatic rifles like the SVT-40, never achieved the distribution levels America reached with the Garand. Most Soviet infantry carried bolt-action Mosin Nagants throughout the war. This contributed to the massive casualty rates Soviet forces suffered. Superior weapons in every soldier's hands mattered more than excellent weapons for a select few. The lesson extends beyond military history. The M1 Garand demonstrated that democratic industrial societies, when threatened, could mobilize resources and human talent that authoritarian regimes couldn't match. The women and minorities who built Garands weren't permitted by ideology. They contributed because free societies utilize all available talent. The training that made soldiers like Alvin York effective wasn't possible without accepting that citizens could be taught complex skills quickly. German military tradition emphasized years of service creating professional soldiers. American system proved motivated citizens with good training and excellent equipment could defeat professionals. This democratic approach to warfare, giving every soldier the best tools and thorough training, proved superior to aristocratic traditions. The German laughter at American military preparations, epitomized by dismissing the M1 Garand as a cheap farmer rifle, echoed the broader Nazi failure to understand their enemies. They underestimated Soviet resilience, British determination, and American industrial capacity. Each miscalculation cost them dearly. But the contempt for American weapons and soldiers perhaps hurt most, because it prevented adaptation until too late. By the time German commanders recognized that American riflemen with Garands were formidable opponents, Germany lacked resources to respond. The war had become mathematical. American production exceeded German capacity by orders of magnitude. American training produced more skilled soldiers faster than Germany could train replacements. American logistics supplied frontline units, while German soldiers scrounged for ammunition. The M1 Garand, the cheap farmer rifle that German intelligence dismissed, became a symbol of this disparity. Every time a German soldier faced American infantry, those 8 shots of semi-automatic fire reminded them they were fighting an enemy with overwhelming material advantages married to growing tactical competence. Alvin York Jr.'s 37 kills in 4 hours represented the extreme possibility of what one well-trained American soldier with a Garand could achieve. Most riflemen never approached that lethality. But the cumulative effect of millions of American soldiers, each carrying an M1 Garand, each trained to use it effectively, each supplied with unlimited ammunition, created firepower advantage that helped determine the war's outcome. In the end, the Germans stopped laughing at the cheap farmer rifle. They learned through bitter experience in places like Hill 293 that American innovation came in many forms. Sometimes it was radar, or the atomic bomb, or Liberty ships, and sometimes it was simply giving every infantryman a semi-automatic rifle and training him to use it. The M1 Garand, dismissed as wasteful excess by German analysts, proved to be exactly what General Patton claimed: the greatest battle implement ever devised. Not because it was perfect, but because it was good enough, mass-produced, and put in the hands of millions of American soldiers who learned to use it devastatingly well. They laughed at the cheap farmer rifle. Then American soldiers like Alvin York, Jr. used it to kill their way across Europe, one 8-round clip at a time, proving that industrial democracy's approach to warfare, equipping every soldier with excellent weapons and training them thoroughly, would bury military aristocracy under an avalanche of lead. The Hill 293 battlefield is quiet now, returned to forest. No monument marks where York fought, no plaque commemorates the 37 Germans who died facing one American with a Garand. But the lesson endures. The side that arms all its soldiers well and trains them thoroughly will defeat the side that arms only elites, regardless of tradition or temporary tactical advantage. The cheap farmer rifle won not through individual brilliance, but through being good enough mass-produced and placed in millions of hands. That was the American way of war. Not elegant, not traditional, but overwhelmingly effective. And the Germans who laughed learned too late that effectiveness, not elegance, wins wars.